Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're opening the doors to what literally feels like a forbidden archive. We're stepping completely away from the history we know, and we're dropping down into the deep, abyssal shadows of an alternate reality. This isn't just some fantasy thought experiment. This is a gritty, honestly terrifying reconstruction of a forgotten timeline. Picture a world totally saturated in deep volcanic oranges, fiery magmas just bleeding into these endless abyssal grays. We are diving into a speculative history that's going to take everything you thought you knew about human civilization and just flip it completely upside down. So get ready, because we're exploring Timeline Zero Series 2, and we are looking at something known as the Green Machine. We were taught that agriculture was invented to feed hungry tribes. But in this timeline, wheat wasn't food. It was a biochemical battery used to power an ancient network of stones. Just let that sink in for a second. It fundamentally shatters our foundational understanding of human agriculture, right? Like everything we know about the dawn of civilization is tied to sustenance, survival, feeding a growing population. But the records we pulled from Universe 02, they suggest an entirely different, incredibly intense motivation for domesticating plants. It had absolutely nothing to do with calories. It was about raw, crackling power.
Part 1. The Agrarian Anomaly.
Okay, let's dive right into this anomaly. According to the archival records, a monumental shift happened exactly 10 solar alignments after a massive construct known as the star dial went live. The mutated clans of Anatolia were facing a massive energy crisis. An existential threat, really. See, they'd built these towering, mysterious T-pillars to generate huge electromagnetic fields, harnessing what the archives call celestial energy. But there was a critical flaw. Actually, scratch that. It was a massive oversight. These immense, sparking fields of energy, totally unstable. They desperately needed a continuous, stable, carbon-based conduit to ground that celestial energy before it literally tore their entire infrastructure apart. In short, they needed a living wire. So, to solve this seemingly impossible problem, they turned to nature. But they warped it to fit their needs. They found their solution in a wild grass called Triticum monococcum, which, is better known to us as einkorn wheat. But the mutated clans of Timeline 02, they didn't look at this grass and see a loaf of bread. No way. They deliberately gene-selected this plant entirely for its non-nutritional properties. They engineered it specifically for its silica-rich cellular walls and its extreme electrical conductivity. They took a simple grass and turned it into a highly efficient conductor.
Part 2. The living copper wires. Let's see how this builds into something truly colossal. We've kind of got to change the visual scale in our minds here. When we think of wheat fields, we usually picture rolling, golden hills shimmering in the summer sun, right? But the visual reality of this cultivation was dark. It was industrial and deeply alien. In our timeline, Timeline 01, wheat equals nutritional sustenance, food, calories, gluten. It's the comforting, life-giving reality that basically built our modern world. But over in Timeline 02, wheat equals electrical conductivity. It's all about silica, wires, and raw energy. The contrast is just jarring. It completely replaces the warmth of a hearth with the cold, gritty reality of a biological power grid.
Now, what's really interesting about this layout is how it actually functioned. Traditional agriculture relies on standard grid-based plots, but the cultivation in Timeline 02, it was organized into massive concentric circuit boards. Just picture that for a second. Miles and miles of dark, mutated wheat planted in perfect, vast circles around glowing stone pillars. Their function wasn't to be harvested for sustenance. These plants were literally acting as living copper wires. They pulled ambient atmospheric electricity straight out of the charged air, channeling it right down their silica-laced stalks directly into their root systems to ground those massive T-pillars.
Part 3. The Silent, Toxic Harvest.
Now, eventually, this crop had to be harvested, but this was a silent, incredibly grim affair. I mean, there were no harvest festivals here, just an atmosphere thick with static electricity and pure hazard. The people absolutely did not eat this grain. It was a high taboo. This biologically engineered crop was highly toxic. Because of its intense electrical properties and its deep root systems, the plant completely saturated itself with heavy metals pulled straight from the soil. Eating this grain wouldn't just give you a stomachache, it was a guaranteed death sentence. It really reinforces just how abysmal and genuinely dangerous the reality of Universe 02 truly was.
Which naturally leads us to the most obvious, glaring question. If touching it was dangerous, and eating it was a lethal taboo, what exactly was the harvest for? Seriously, What do you do with millions of stalks of heavy metal-saturated, electrically charged grass?
Part 4. Powering the planetary computer. The answer lies in the brutal, industrial engine that actually required this toxic harvest to function. The mutated clans weren't just grounding energy, they were powering something incomprehensibly massive, the planetary computer. And the process they used to feed it was grueling and highly volatile. First, they had to harvest those dangerous heavy metal-saturated stalks. Next, and try to imagine the scale, and honestly the smell of this, they fermented the entire harvest in giant limestone vats. And we are not talking about brewing beer here. We're talking about a violent industrial biochemical reaction, churning like glowing rivers of magma inside colossal stone containers. Finally, this process yielded a fluid, which they channeled directly into hollow troughs carved out straight beneath the T-pillars.
This process didn't just yield some useless sludge, it created a dense, highly volatile alcohol-silica compound. This fluid was, for all intents and purposes, the lifeblood of their technology. By pouring this biochemical battery fluid into those hollow underground troughs, it sustained the T-pillars' electromagnetic fields. It essentially acted as a massive liquid capacitor. And it was the absolute only way to ensure the planetary computer kept running through the longest, darkest nights when that ambient celestial energy dropped. Without this toxic grain, their entire world would literally go dark. It really forces us to completely reevaluate the origins of human ingenuity, doesn't it? We look at a grain of wheat and we see bread. We see the very foundation of human civilization. But Timeline Zero reveals a universe where that exact same plant was a desperate, toxic solution to an apocalyptic energy crisis. It makes you wonder, what other fundamental truths of our history are merely survival mechanisms in a forgotten timeline? If wheat was a battery, what else have we misunderstood? Well, thank you for exploring the archive with me today. Keep questioning the established narrative, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.